Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for joining. We'll continue Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, ninth chapter, conversation between Lord Brahma and Lord Himself. So we are in the third sloka of Chatushloki Bhagavatam. So let's begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya
Narayanam Namaskritya
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Naram Chaiva
Chaiva Narottama
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswim Vyasam
Tato Jayam Udirayet
Yam Uthiraye
Ashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu
Taprayesu Bhadreshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavate Uttama Shloke
Bhagavate Uttama Sloke
Bhaktir Bhavati Nayishtiki
Bhaktir Bhayam Namaste
Krishnaya Vasudevaya
Naya Vasudevaya
Devaki Nandanaya Cha
Devaki Nandanaya Cha
Nandagopakumaraya
Nandagopakumaraya
Govindaya Namo Namaha.
Govindaya Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So we are in the questions by Lord Brahma. So we discussed in the past sessions that so in answer to Parikshit's first question, Sukadeva Goswami is about to answer about the material body, and he wanted to answer in the way Lord answered Lord Brahma. Supreme Lord answered Lord Brahma. So he spoke about Lord Brahma's darshan of Vaikuntha and how he meditated, and Lord Brahma meditated on the Supreme Lord, and being pleased with him, Supreme Lord have given him darshan of Vaikuntha, and the people or the devotees in Vaikuntha. And then there was a conversation between Lord Brahma and the Supreme Lord. So those are the 4 verses. We'll directly go there. So we already discussed these 2 verses before the break. So the first is about, please tell me about your material and spiritual forms. Lord's material and spiritual forms. So Lord's material form is the universe, and the spiritual form exists in the spiritual world. And he is the one from whom everything comes, and he exists before and after as well. And then the second question was, how are different energies of Lord working? Everything is connected with Lord. Nothing is independent of Lord. Everything in action is an energy and expansion of the Supreme Lord. That's in brief. And the third question we'll discuss today, and fourth question as well. So third question is how the Lord carries out his pastimes in relation to his energies, both his Mahamaya and Yogamaya. There are 2 energies of the Supreme Lord. One is Mahamaya, which is in the realm of material existence, and the second is Yogamaya in the realm of spiritual world. So we'll see this verse now. Five. यथा महन्ति भूतानि
Yata Mahanti Bhutani
भूतेषु प्रवचेस्सनु
Bhuteshu
Bhutesu
Chesvanu
Chevasanu
Pravistani Apravistani
Pravistani Apravistani
Tatha Teshu na Teshvaham.
Tatha Teshu
Teshu Nate
Nateshu
Swaham
Yata Mahanti Bhutani. Just like, what are the Panchamahabhutas? Water, air, fire, ether, and earth. These five elements. Yata Mahanti Bhutani. How these five elements, Bhuteshu Avachesvanu, means how they enter various bodies. Bhuteshu means bodies. So how they enter various bodies. Bhuteshu means elements. How they enter the bodies, various bodies. Sometimes they occupy the body of lower animals. Sometimes they occupy the body of the demigods, and sometimes they occupy the middle one, which is the jivas, like us humans. But in all cases, they remain detached. Elements do not really bother whether they are in the body of a great demigod or they're in the body of an ant. Elements just enter any of these bodies. They are very detached. So just like elements are detached when they enter the material bodies of jivas in the material existence. Similarly, when Lord enters pravishtani apravishtani tatha teshu na teshvaham, means when Lord enters, he is also in a way neutral in the material existence, in the Mahamaya. But when he enters the spiritual realm in the Yogamaya, which is a spiritual world where everything is Chit Shakti. So here everything is Jada Shakti, but in the spiritual world everything is Chit Shakti. When he enters the spiritual realm, there he is very attached. Means he is engaged. He is directly reciprocating with everything in the spiritual realm. Right? So that is the meaning of this. So let's read the translation. Anyone want to read the translation?
O Brahma, please know that the universal elements enter into the cosmos and at the same time do not enter into the cosmos. Similarly, I myself also exist within everything created, and at the same time, I am outside of the everything.
Yeah. So they enter and do not enter. Means basically they are they are there, but they are not. They are very detached. It's just like water on the you know lotus leaf, right? So similarly, Lord in the material world, he comes, but he's a neutral. He stays neutral throughout the jiva's existence, because the jiva does not connect with the Supreme Lord directly. But when jiva turns, when spiritualizes his life, then Lord reciprocates. When it doesn't mean that Lord doesn't care the living entities in the material world. He engages through other his energies, his expansions, right? He has deputations for Mother Durga, for example, to take care of all the material existence, right? So through his energies he operates, but he does not directly connect with the activities of the material existence, right? But that's why it is mentioned when Lord comes to the material existence, it is mainly to please the devotees. Even in the material world, when Lord engages with the devotees, for a pure devotee, Lord is directly engaged, because for him he is actually in the divine potency. He is not in the material or illusory potency, right? Yeah. So can read, Prabhu.
Similarly, the Supreme Lord,
From
by
here?
the
Can you read from here? Sorry.
sure, Prabhu.
Yeah.
The elements were created first, and therefore they enter into the bodily constructions later. but in both circumstances, they entered the cosmos and also did not enter. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, by his different energies, namely the internal and external, is within in everything in the manifested cosmos. And at the same time, he is outside of everything, situated in the kingdom of God, Vaikuntha Loka. As described before, this is very nicely stated in the Brahma Samhita as follows.
आनंद चिन्मय रसा प्रतिभाविताभिस्ताभिर्य एव निजरूपतया कलाभिः गोलोक एव निवसति अखिलात्मभूतो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि.
Correct. I worship the personality of Godhead, Govinda, who, by expansion of his internal potency of transcendental existence, knowledge, and bliss, enjoys his own and expanded forms. Simultaneously, he enters into every atom of the creation.
So Lord enters every atom of material existence also. As Kshirodak Sai Vishnu, he is the one that is part of um, every atom of material existence. We have seen, in the, in our childhood, how even in the atom there are electrons and protons, and they're all moving, right? They're all moving within the atom also. I wonder at the time, how this movement is happening in the elements, because by Newton's law, if you all know, nothing moves out of inertia, unless there is a force applied from an external, there is an external force. So, what is the force behind the movement of electrons and protons in the atom? In the atom, right? So now we understand it is actually Paramatma within that, right? For example, we are a living entity. How do we know Paramatma exists in our body? Simple. Otherwise, who started the heart? We didn't start. Nobody, no doctor started. So somebody has to switch on the button at some point. We are not. We are born with a beating heart. So that's there is some functionality going on, like a mission, right? Somebody has to start. So the starter within the body is Paramatma, right? So similarly, the planets are moving around the sun. Who started it? Somebody has to start. Without that, that orderly movement is not possible. One thing is to maintain the orbit, but somebody has to start. Even that we can understand. So that is more or less like Garbhodaksa Vishnu, right? So within the atom, it is Kshirodaksa Vishnu. Within the universe, it is the Garbhodaksa Vishnu that initiates the movement. Anyway, continue here.
The impersonalist can imagine or even perceive that the Supreme Brahman is thus all-pervading, and therefore they conclude that there is no possibility of his personal forms. Herein lies the mystery of his transcendental knowledge. This mystery is transcendental, the love of God, and one who is supercharged with such a transcendental love of God can without difficulty see the personality of Godhead in every atom and every movable or immovable object. And at the same time, he can see the personality of Godhead in his own abode, Goloka, enjoying the eternal pastimes with his eternal associate, who are also expansions of his transcendental existence. This vision is the real mystery of spiritual knowledge, as stated by the Lord in the beginning, Saryasam
Rasyam tad angam cha.
Angamacha. This mystery is the most confidential part of the knowledge of the Supreme, and it is impossible for the mental speculators to discover by dint of the intellectual gymnastics. This mystery can be revealed through the process of recommended by Brahmaji in Brahma Samhita 5.38 as follows.
प्रेमाञ्जनच्छुरितभक्तिविलोचनेन शान्तः सदैव हृदयेषु विलोकयन्ति Yam Shama Sundaramachinta Gunaswarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
I worship the original personality of Godhead, Govinda, whom the pure devotee, their eyes smeared with the ointment of love of Godhead, always observe within their hearts. This Govinda, the original personality of Godhead, is Sayam Sundara with all transcendental qualities.
Yeah. So only a devotee can experience the Supreme Lord, whether in the material world or in the spiritual world, right? Because his eyes are anointed with love. That makes the difference. And when in that relation, Lord reciprocates with the devotee, right? Uh, it happens by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, and of course, through the Guru Parampara, right? Yeah, this mystery, this vision is the real mystery of spiritual knowledge, as stated by the Lord in the. This is mystery for a materialist. It's very difficult, or impersonalist. It's very difficult to understand about the Supreme Lord, the personal form of the Lord. Yeah, it is only by the grace of the Lord, devotee, and especially Guru, one gets to understand the personality of Supreme Lord. Yeah. Etavad eva jignasyam
Etavad eva jidnyasam
tattva jignasu natmanaha
तत्त्वजिज्ञासुनात्मनः
अन्वया व्यतिरेकाभ्यम
अन्वयाव्यतिरेकाभ्याम्
यत् सर्वत्र सर्वदा.
यस्यात् सर्वत्र
सर्वत्र सर्वदा.
So this is in answer to Lord Brahma's question. Please give me the guidance to carry out your service. Brahma is appointed to serve the jivas in the middle world, by creating them. So that is his service. So how I can do my service without any pride and without any attachment? So that was his question in the 29th, 30th verses. So that will be answered by Lord. So what answer Lord gives? So it's very cryptic answer here. This is an instruction to everyone to not develop pride and bondage in the material existence. So let's unravel this verse, right? So let's read the translation first.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
A person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, must certainly search for it up to this, in all circumstances, in all space and time, and both directly and indirectly.
So there are several words here. So one is Anvaya Vyatireka. Anvaya Vyatireka is a criteria. Anvaya means directly and in Vyatireka. So what Lord is saying, you have to practice a system which directly gives result, and by not doing that which will not give the result, Vyatireka Anvaya, if you perform, it will give result. But if you don't perform, it should not give result. Yatsat sarvatra sarvada means it should be possible to perform that at all times and at all circumstances. So if you have to first is another thing is tattva jignasu atmanaha. So you have to approach with a humble spirit to a spiritual master and inquire from him for a path that by following which directly it gives the result, and by not following it won't give the result. But if that is missing, it won't give you the result, and it should be practicable at all times and at all circumstances. So now what it means we'll try to understand, right? So what is something that can be directly practiced, which gives result. And by not having that will not give result. So let's through some verses in Bhagavatam we'll understand what those are like. So for example here, so there is a beautiful verse in first canto, 5th chapter, 17th verse. So Chaktva swadharmam charanambujam harer bhajan apakvot patet tato yadhi yatrakvavapudram abuddha amusya kim ko vardha atho bhajatam swadharmataha. Anyone want to read this?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hmm.
One who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in the devotional service of the Lord may sometimes fall down while in an immature stage, yet there is no danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, though fully engaged in occupational duties, does not gain anything.
So Lord Brahma told, the Supreme Lord told Lord Brahma, practice a method by following which you get the result, directive. By presence of it, you get result. By not having that will not give you any result. So here, what is the criteria that this verse is saying? If you are engaged in some profession, say teaching, right? You are engaged, that is your material occupation, and you are good at that, okay? But you have neglected devotion service. What does this say? If you perfectly do your teaching, but if you have neglected devotion service, then this verse says you won't gain anything. Right? If you perform your duties perfectly as per Karma Yoga, you would at least get Swarga. But this verse is saying, even if you perform your occupational duties perfectly, but not engaged in devotion service to the Supreme Lord, then you don't get anything. On the other hand, you have some material duties, but for some reason, you neglected it and fully engaged in devotion service, you will still get the result. So it is actually, so teaching as a profession, right? If you, that is not satisfying the Anvaya criteria. If you have two criteria here, right? Sorry, Vyatireka criteria. If you don't perform, if you only perform that, you won't get results. So that is Anvaya failed, right? Similarly, Vyatireka, if you don't perform, still you can gain by performing devotion service. So Vyatireka also failed for any material duties. So in this way, but on the other hand, devotion service, in this verse it shows Vyatireka is satisfied. Vyatireka means if you don't perform that, you won't get result. You may perform your duties perfectly, but if you don't perform devotion service, you are going to get 0. So it satisfies Vyatireka criteria there. And also the other part, Bhajan Apakatva, that part tells, if you engage in devotion service, Anvaya, but neglect or, by mistake you can't do your material duties, then it still gives you result. So devotion service satisfies both Anvaya and Vyatireka. Other professions do not satisfy both, right? So this is how, Acharyas explain us. So a few more verses like that. So these are basically telling how only devotion service fits the criteria through the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam itself, right? So we can directly read the translation here. So this is from 10th Canto, 14th chapter, 5th verse. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, Almighty Lord, in the past, many yogis in this world achieved the platform of devotional service by offering all their endeavors unto you and faithfully carrying out their prescribed duties. Through such devotional service, perfected by the processes of hearing and chanting about you, they came to understand you, O infallible one, and could easily surrender to you and achieve your supreme abode.
So these are in the olden times, yogis would practice mostly Ashtanga yoga. But at the same time, so here if you see the verse, so they are, Bhuman Bhavavo Yoginas. These are yogis. So they are performing all their duties in yoga, but they're also performing Bhakchaiva, Katopa Nitya. So they're also performing devotion service, in the process of hearing and chanting about the Supreme Lord. So the yogis, right, when they perform devotion service, then they achieve the supreme abode, right? Achyuta te gatim param. So they will achieve. So even if you perform, so in the past, in the other verse, we discussed how if you perform occupation duties but neglect devotion service, you get nothing, even if you do perfectly. On the other hand, here we are reading a verse where it says, if you perform your other yoga practices, Ashtanga yoga or whatever, but along with it, if you perform devotion service, you will achieve the supreme abode. So this also requires, even if you perform any other practice of yoga, this says you need to have bhakti in the mix. Then only you will have the result. If you only perform other paths, then you may not get the highest abode. So that's what this verse says. So this also shows how devotional service is a required criteria for even performers of yoga. So this is another verse. So the seriously inquisitive student, or says, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Shruti. Yeah. Yeah. So here again, what is required? Devotional service. Even if you practice Jnana Yoga, so this is knowledge and detachment. So if you acquire knowledge, you become detached from the material world because you know everything is temporary, right? So even those Jnana Vairagya Yukta means those who are trying to acquire knowledge and detachment, even for them, even for great sages like them, only by rendering devotion service unto you, right? Bhaktya Sruta Grihyatya, right? So, yeah. So, only by then they will actually achieve perfection. Yeah. So, this is also shows even other paths like Jnana Yoga also require bhakti in the mix. So, this is a very famous verse, right? Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yujeta purusham param. Right? A person who has broader intelligence, whether he is full of material desires, without any material desires, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the Personality of Godhead. Right? Even if you have material desires, or you don't have material desires, or you are after liberation, either of all these conditions, right? The perfection can be achieved only by worship of the Supreme Lord. Right? So this also shows bhakti is the main thing that is most important ingredient in anything. So this is another famous verse. Kirata honandra pulinda pulkasha abira sumba yavana kashadaya yenye cha papa yadapa shraya shraya sudhyanti tasmai prabha vishnave namaha. Yeah. So Kirata, Huna, Andhra, Pulinda, Pulkasha, Andhra means Andhra Pradesh. Abhira, Sumbha, Yavana, members of Kasha races, and even others addicted to sinful acts can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord. Right? Even the lowest of people. So until now we discussed about normal people who are engaged in occupational duties will achieve perfection by devotion service. Then we discussed about yogis who will achieve perfection only when there is devotion service in their practice, and then about jnanis, and now finally about people who are low class, you can say, right? So these are people described here, and So who are addicted to sinful acts can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord. Due to his being the supreme power, I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So even if you are lowest, still you can be elevated. That is the power and potency of the bhakti, devotion service to the Supreme Lord, right? So in this way, we can see how bhakti alone fits the criteria described by the Supreme Lord to Lord Brahma, right? Anvaya and Vyatireka. So with bhakti, it is possible. So anything can be proven like this, right? So if you want to study what causes sweetness in sweet rice, right? One way is to, so we know what are the ingredients of sweet rice. That is milk, rice, oil or ghee, and then sweet or sugar. So these are the main ingredients, and milk, of course. So these are the ingredients. One way, Anvaya, is how do you know what causes sweetness? One way is directly perceiving the taste of each item. You can you can taste sugar, you know sugar is the cause of sweetness. Vyatireka abhyam means opposite. How do you know? You can make sweet rice with everything, but not including rice. Then it still remains sweet. So by removing rice, it's not, of course, it's not a sweet rice, but by removing rice, you know that rice is not is the cause of sweetness. Remove milk, still it is sweet. So milk is not the cause of sweetness. Remove sugar, then you know, yes, sugar is the cause of sweetness. So that is how Anvaya Vitarika. This is a Vedic way of determining the cause, the root cause of a thing, right? So Anvaya Vitareka. So we know by what Lord meant here is it's only bhakti, because it is corroborating with so many verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, right? And it's only bhakti that sarvatra sarvada anybody can perform. There is no qualification for it. It's not like you have to be you can chant the holy name even when you are eating, or there is no offense, right? At any circumstance, at any time, in the early morning or in the night. So there is no limitations to it. So it's only bhakti that is all powerful, that can be performed at any time, and without bhakti, no other process or path or activity gives any result. And with bhakti alone, you can achieve the highest perfection without doing anything else, right? So that is so what Lord is recommending is perform that by going to a spiritual master and humbly inquiring from him. A person who is searching after the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, must certainly search for it up to this. Up to this, what is that? In all circumstances, in all space and time, both directly and indirectly. He should pick a path that is going to work by Anvaya and Vyatireka. So which is Bhakti Yoga only, nothing else, which we have proven with so many other verses. So Prabhupada also speaks about some of those verses we discussed here. Yeah, so this is how Lord Narayan is the Supreme Lord is. Prabhupada is talking about various verses that corroborate, that Bhakti to Supreme Lord is the highest. Apacheti suduracharo bhajate mam ananyabhat sadrevasa samantavya samyak yavasitosa. So even if a person is addicted to all sorts of sinful activities, if he happens to be engaged in the loving service of the Supreme Lord under proper guidance, he is to be considered the most perfect holy man without a doubt. And thus any person whatsoever and whosoever he or she may be, even the fallen women, the less intelligent laborer, the dull merchant, or even a man lower than all of these, can attain the highest perfection of life by going back home, back to Godhead, provided he or she take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord in all earnestness. This sincere earnestness is the only qualification that can lead one to the highest perfectional stage of life. And thus, unless and until such real earnestness is aroused, there is a difference between cleanliness and uncleanliness, learning or non-learning, in the material estimation. Any questions or anything? Any discussion points?
Prabhuji, just one thing to clarify. In this verse, it's mentioned space and time. So what is the significance of space and time?
So time means any time. Space means any place. For example, you can even chant in the bathroom or sing the glories of Lord. So there is no specific place. When you can chant in discotheque, right? For example, certain vratas or pujas, they have to be performed in an auspicious place after taking a bath. Rituals require several conditions to be satisfied. Otherwise, the devatas will be upset and they may give you counter results. But the holy name of Lord is all pure, especially chanting of the holy name. Of course, Archana and others require certain, you have to take a bath and perform Gayatri and perform, certain specific Archana with these. Agama Sastra say that. But holy name of Lord specifically can be chanted at any place. So that's what it means.
Thank you, Prabhuji. That's good.
So this is again another Anvaya Vyatireka criteria. One who has unflinching devotion unto the Supreme Lord must have all good qualities of the demigods. And contrarily, one who is not a devotee of the Lord must be hovering in the darkness of mental speculation and thus must be engaged in material impermanence. So only a devotee can have the godly qualities of demigods. Anybody else will be hovering on the mental plane, right? Manoradhena means we cannot really 100% trust anyone else because anybody else can be, even though, like for example, great rishi like Vishwamitra Muni, after thousands of years of practice of meditation, he falls down when Urvashi comes, for example. She still, that agitation is possible because mind is not purified through any other practice fully. On the other hand, we see devotees like Haridas Thakur, even Maya Devi comes to agitate him, he will not be agitated, right? So like that. Wow, so many verses. Yeah, I think let's read this one. Even if a person is fully addicted to all sorts of sinful acts, if he happen to be engaged in the loving transcendental service of the Lord under proper guidance, he is to be considered the most perfect holy man without a doubt. And thus, any person, whatsoever and whosoever he or she may be, even the fallen woman, the less intelligent labor. Oh, we already read this. Yeah. So even if he performs devotion service, he is elevated spiritually, right? Whatever their condition may be before that. Yeah, this was we read. Yeah. So etanmatam samatishta
Etan matam samastista
paramena samadhina
paramena samadhina
bhavan kalpa vikalpeshu
bhavan kalpa vikalpesu
navimuhyati karhichit.
nah vimyuhati kachit chit.
Yeah. So now Lord is giving his concluding. This is not instruction. This is about instructing to follow the instruction given so far. Yeah. Please read.
Translation. O Brahma, just follow this conclusion by fixed concentration of mind, and no pride will disturb you, neither in the partial nor in the final devastation.
So, so Lord is telling, just follow this conclusion. So by fixed concentration of mind. So you have to be very alert and completely focus your mind on your service to me. And through that, you will not be impacted by pride of your service. I'm creating the whole universe, and I'm able to rebuild every time it is devastated. So that act will not give you any pride if you focus on devotional service 100%. Yeah.
Srimad Bhagavatam is the text of the personality of Godhead and his unalloyed devotees, who are also known as Bhagavatas, and any outsider should have no access to this confidential literature of devotional service. But unfortunately, the impersonalist, who has no relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sometimes tries to interpret Srimad Bhagavatam by his poor fund of knowledge in grammar and dry speculation. Therefore, the Lord warns Brahma, and through Brahma, all future devotees of the Lord in the disciplic succession of Brahma, that one should never be misled by the conclusion of the so-called grammarians or by other men with a poor fund of knowledge, but must always fix the mind properly via the parampara system.
Mhm. So because we are fortunate to have the parampara, parampara authored books, we're able to understand all these verses carefully, right? So otherwise it's difficult because that Anvaya Vyatireka can be interpreted by impersonalists in various ways, right? But because of the mercy of, our acharyas, through understanding various verses, we can clearly understand this is all, clearly talking about devotional service. Yeah. So therefore, Lord warns Lord Brahma, and through Brahma, all future devotees of the Lord in the disciplic section, that one should never be misled by the conclusion of the so-called grammarians or by other men with a poor fund of knowledge, but must always fix the mind properly via the parampara system. Yeah. So we should not deviate from parampara system to hear from here and there. Should not do that.
The bona fide spiritual master, by his personal activities, teaches the disciple the principles of devotional service. Without personal service, one would go on speculating like the impersonalist and dry speculators, life after life, and would be unable to reach the final conclusion. By following the instruction of the bona fide spiritual master in conjunction with the principles of revealed scriptures, the student will rise to the plane of complete knowledge, which will be exhibited by development of detachment from the world of sense gratification.
Mhm. Yeah. It is only by the mercy of the spiritual master and by humble service to the spiritual master, one can assimilate the knowledge and develop detachment from the world of sense gratification. So he will rise to the platform of knowledge and develop detachment. Yeah. Sri Shuka Uvacha
Sri Shuka Uvacha
Sampradishaivam Ajano
Sampradisvaiviyam ajano
Jananam Paramestinam
jananam paramestitanam
Ashyatastasya Tadrupam
pasyatasya tadrupam
Atmano Anya Runathari.
atmano nyarunatara.
So what is this? So,
Sukadeva Goswami said to Maharaj Parikshit, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, after being seen in his transcendental form, instructing Brahmaji, the leader of the living entities, disappeared.
so Lord Hari, so he has actually displayed his transcendental form before Lord Brahma and instructed these 4 verses that we have discussed, these 4 seed verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. He instructed Lord Brahma and then disappeared. So this is the discussion between Sukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit. So he answered Maharaj Parikshit's question about creation through the discussion between Lord Brahma and the Supreme Lord. And then he concludes by saying that the Supreme Lord disappeared after instructing Lord Brahma. So, so this ends the current section. Yeah. So here it shows that Lord actually showed his form, Atmanorupam. Okay? So in this verse, it is clearly mentioned that the Lord is Ajanaha, or the Supreme Person, and that he was showing his transcendental form to Lord Brahma while instructing him in summarization of Srimad Bhagavatam in 4 verses. So Lord is a person. That is what you can see from here. So Lord instructed in person to the Lord Brahma because he is the first living entity in the material existence, and he is the in charge of all the creation, and so he was given direct darshan by the Supreme Lord and instruction. Okay, so that concludes this section. We'll resume this verse and this next section completely next week. We're almost time. Any other questions? Okay. So those who are doing presentation tomorrow for Bhakti Shastri, so you all have the presentation.
Prabhuji, I thought 25th, right? Next.
This week we don't have. Okay, yeah, correct. Sorry.
Tomorrow Raswati Mataji birthday.
Correct. Okay, sure. Yeah. So we'll meet next week. We'll end the session here. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.